Greetings everyone and welcome to our broadcast for today. So everybody, let's start off with this interesting topic, which is about the word, how it is started and how most of it changed the course of history. Let's start off with the Stone Age, where most likely picture it as a more brutal and violent stage of evolution.
Well, technically, not only that, Ron, so thanks to the Stone Age and the human survival instinct, human found a way to how to craft a tool, especially from a stone and flint.
But not to mention the era of bronze, which introduced so much more than just the Stone Age, evolving the stone tools Jude mentioned into bronze or copper.
Let also not forget the multiple other inventions were made, like the wheels, and the first writing system was invented too. Let also acknowledge the Iron Age, which replaced the bronze technology into iron tech.
Also, let's not forget that this also brought upon the collapse of a few civilizations, for example, Troy and Gaza.
Moving on to the scientific revolution, it was the start of a more revolutionary era with the prominent rise of mathematics, physics, and whatnot.
Let's also not forget about the end of the Renaissance period. Disregarding the philosophy and literature, people of this era were more focused on science. Industrial Revolution is one of the more memorable and more effective revolutions of the time. It is introduced as the multiple new technologies.
Those technology that mark pointing out or mostly into a steampunk era, which is introduced as steam engine to us, which is more likely help us progress through adventuring through a different parts of the world. The 18th and 19th century were most of the effects towered to society and the human rights.
Yes, yes, that is accurately correct. These issues with the society dividing the social classes, and not to mention disregarding the rights of women in this era.
The talk of this early stage of this world is quite mesmerizing, but let's get back to the 20th century, which introduced space exploration and other things.
Yes, things like nuclear weapon or nuclear powered facilities, automated technological advances, and other things. One of the most interesting eras was the digital era, or the information age, which is introduced devices and gave the world a new view of how things were going to be run.
That is actually all true. Let also not forget that the information technology was introduced to this world, which provided new courses and to study and new backgrounds to master. But hey, let us not forget the effects of the Gothenburg Revolution had upon the people to the early days, especially the printing press, diba, which helped the world bayatan.
That was not the only thing that the printing press or the Gutenberg revolution created. It also allowed democracy to be created, which allowed to the people to shape necessary authority whether they needed to.
Well, all the talk of revolutions and eras gave us all quite an insight of what the world used to be as compared to nowadays.
Actually, when you put it that way, actually it's mind blowing how far humanity has come.
Yes, and all those conclude this is the end of the broadcast. I'd like to thank everyone for listening and hope you all have learned something today. Thank you.
Good day everyone, it's Rename once again. Today, learning will focus on the historical antecedents in which social considerations changed the course of science and technology in the Philippines. We're going to travel back in time and trace the history and how it started from the present time. Contrary to many beliefs that many Filipinos are uncivilized before the coming of the Spaniards. So during pre-colonial period, the early inhabitants of the archipelago had their own culture and traditions. As we know, they have own belief system and indigenous knowledge. Our country is already composed of groups or tribes that governs specific areas with unique sets of rules or justice system, which may not be as complicated as our justice systems right now, but the fact that they have their own rules in the community. Before are governed by Iraq and local communities are governed by the Datu. They also worship or praise objects in nature such as rocks, trees, mountains, and many more or anything with unusual formation. Also, science and technology already existed during that time. One great example is the Banawi Rice Terraces, which is a project of our ancestor to maximize irrigations, also food production. So how does culture and traditions are shown in the pre-colonial times? Well, it is said that is embedded in their way of life, meaning they are unaware that what they are doing is already forming culture. One great example is on health. Our ancestors already know the medicinal and therapeutic properties of plants to cure various illnesses and diseases. In terms of technology during their times, in building houses, we already have or maximize the use of products in the environment such as bamboo, woods, and anahaw to build house and contracts, homes and communities. They're also developing tools from rocks and metals were traded from the other nations, and also we had our musical instruments only shows that early Filipinos are already forming technologies. During Spanish regime, the Philippines, it contribute to the growth of science and technology in the country. They have introduced formal education and founded scientific education. During American regime, science was inclined towards agriculture, food processing, forestry, medicines, and pharmacy. Not much focus was given to the development of industrial technology due to free trade policy with US that nurtured an economy forwards agriculture and trade. Also, communications device like wireless, telegraph, telephone, radios, and movies were introduced by the Americans. The influence of the American regime brought about good and bad aspect to the Philippines. Many roads and bridges were constructed. New technologies were introduced to the country. These technologies help the Philippines industry and agriculture.
Thank you for discussing that. You look beautiful on your outfit. Anyways, I'm Albert Kapimpin Jr. I'm continuing the discussion of Miss Gases. I'm talking about Commonwealth period and science and technology since independence. Moving on to the topic, Commonwealth period. This was the time that the science and technology has increased because of the government acknowledged the help of the science into our lives. They saw the importance of promoting scientific development for the economic development of the country, that the science and technology should be patronaged by the state. The government expanded the public school system to to accommodate the increasing number of school children. The higher education was funded by the private sector. The administration has recognized a lot of private schools. With all of that, university in the country, they had total of 19,575 college students, that is trained scientists and engineers in the Philippines. I think this has been a good thing and help our country in our economic growth. Having political independence has been a good thing. Not relying on other to increase our economy is a good thing. We are learning how to handle this topic. The Commonwealth government worked toward the development of economic self-reliance, which would be necessary to sustain genuine political independence. They created National Economic Council to prepare an economic program and advise the government on economic and financial questions. We had a lot of development and promotions of local industries. The NOC was also assigned on taking care of Bureau of Science, animal industry, and plant industry for commercial production. They make a lot of systems to adopt for the local private businessmen. And please wait a minute, I'm going to take Going back to the topic, they had a lot of plans they made. They made a lot of efforts, but the Commonwealth government was unable to achieve its goal to economic self-reliance. Because of the American government, who has the foreign trade and tariff policies, we were limited to do our things. Because of that, and on 1941, a war broke out, made by the Japanese troops. The Filipinos had a resistance movement regarding educational and scientific activities, but the center of all educational and scientific activities, such as Manila, was destroyed, and this was the time of the Philippines has become an independent state. They had a hard time economic construction and going back to the normal. This has become the dark days of the Philippines in our history. When we think that we are growing, but a lot of things is limited, but we as a Filipino, the heart that we have is strong, that no one can destroy it. Moving on to our next topic, science and technology since independence. Since independence, the system of teaching or educating scientists, engineers, and physicians that has been during American regime continues since independence in 1946. The government keeps supporting the different level of education. The number of schools has been increasing ever since 1946, but not everyone has the power to give the quality education because of lack of preparedness and equipment. Most of the school is managed like a business enterprises and are heavily dependent on tuition fees. Most of these schools are concentrating on having low-cost courses like business administration, liberal arts and education, and because of this, a lot of students enroll on this type of course. Thinking about this has not become a good thing, and this has become a sad reality on us. Just because of the financial problem, not everyone is pursuing doing science and engineering education. A lot of people who has a dream of becoming doctor, scientist, or engineering is not achieving it. But there's also a sectarian university back in the days where they have a good facility to study and learn a lot of experience. But the thing is, they have selected admission and follow lower faculties students ratio. And I think this is a good thing to be focused on teaching. And even they have a minimum student, even having a little product on scientist and engineer, I think what matters the most, they are having progress. Moving on, ever since 1946, the students and the graduate has been increasing, but the students who is pursuing science is not that much. As we mentioned, money has become a problem. Just to pursue a good education, engineering and science courses, entail longer periods of study, and have generally become more expensive to pursue. A lot of professional organizations initiated to change in the collegiate curriculum for this specialization and work for improvements in educational standards. I think the organization meddling on the study of the student is a good thing because they know how to learn properly and much faster, and they want to produce more experts like them. After independence, a lot of things really happen. It has a chain reaction effect on the education. I think they had the freedom, but it was not that easy because of the lack of support, planning, and coordination. The budget on given the budget on giving a good facility is not an easy thing, so it was limited. A lot of institution has been made that focuses on different branches of science. A lot of law has been passed on the court to support the science and technology of the Philippines for the economic growth. Wrapping all of this, science has been a good thing on our daily lives, but it was not an easy thing to pursue because it requires a lot of things just to give a good evidence on the theory. Having the increase of the educational in our country can really help our economic growth. Thank you for listening. So moving on our next topic, let's hear it to my.
Good evening, everyone. So we will discuss about intellectual revolution that define the society. So the Darwinian revolution is a theory that says the new species arise naturally by the process of evolution rather than created by God. The adaptation of many species, such as the hinges of the bivalve shell and the wings and plumes on seed, dispersed by air, were compelling the evidence that the creator had created each species for its intended place in the economy of nature. So this is my first questions. Why Darwinian revolution is important?
Charles Darwin's theory of evolution through natural selection brought about one of the greatest intellectual and cultural revolutions in the modern era. And it changes the way we think of science, religion, philosophy in our modern society.
Okay, that's correct. And my second question is, how did Darwin change the world?
Charles Robert Darwin transformed the way we understand the natural world with ideas that, in his day, were nothing short of revolutionary. He and his fellow company in the field of biology gave us insight to the fantastic diversity of life on Earth and its origins, including our own as a species.
So the next topic is Freudian. Freudian. So Miss Tagalog will discuss about Freudian. No.
What is Freudian revolution? Relating to the ideas or methods of Sigmund Freud, especially his ideas about the way in which people's hidden thoughts and feelings influence their behavior, especially with respect to the causes and treatment of neurotic and psychopathic states, the interpretation of dreams, relating to or influenced by Sigmund Freud, and his methods of psychoanalysis, especially with reference to the importance of sexuality in human behavior. Miss Mavi,
Yes.
let me ask you a question. And how do you describe Freudian ideas as a scientist about Sigmund Freud's contribution?
So according to Sigmund Freud hypothesis, the human mind is divided into two parts. So the conscious and unconscious mind. This idea emphasizes the unconscious mental process in the treatment of mental disorder. Freud also created the ID, ego, and superego, which he dubbed the three agencies of the human personality.
Yeah, that's right. And the second question is, how does the Freudian revolution transform society?
Freud's most obvious impact was to change the way society through about the dealt with mental illness, because psychoanalysis analysis, which Freud invented mental illness, was almost universally considered organic. Uh, that is, it was thought to come from some kind of deterioration or ano ba to? Disease of the brain was an Austrian neurologist who is perhaps most known as the founder of psychoanalysis. Freud developed a set of therapeutic techniques centered on talk therapy that involve the use of strategies such as transference, free association, and dream interpretation. So I'm going to discuss the Copernican revolution. So Copernican revolution is shift in the field of astronomy from a geocentric understanding of the universe centered around Earth to a heliocentric understanding centered around the sun as articulated by the Polish astronomer Nicholas Copernicus in the 16th century. This shift marked the start of the broader scientific revolution that set the foundation of modern modern science and allowed science to flourish as an autonomous discipline within its own right. So this is my question. What was the Copernican revolution and how did it change the human view of the universe?
Copernican revolution, the dramatic change initiated by Copernicus, that occurred when we learned that Earth is a planet orbiting the sun rather than the center to the universe. For the longest time, we thought all the object in the sky revolved around us, and that the Earth was the center of the universe. Copernicus discovered simple geometric relationships that allowed him to calculate each planet's orbital period around the sun and its relative distance from the sun in terms of Earth's sun distance, resulting that the Earth revolved around the sun and not us.
So that's good. So the second question is what is the impact of Copernican revolution?
My answer is when Copernicus replaced the Earth with the sun at the center of the universe, it changed the role of astronomy in society. A lot of the resistance to Copernicus' theory came not only from within the scientific community, but also a result of the social implications of heliocentric universe. So I'm going to discuss about the intellectual revolutions that define society in scientific revolution. So how can science be defined? Science as an idea. It includes ideas, theories, and all available systematic explanations and observations about the natural and physical world. For the information revolution, describes current economic, social, and technological trends beyond the Industrial Revolution. Many competing terms have been proposed that focus on different aspects of this societal development. So, Miss Mavi, I have a question on you. Two questions also. The first is, what are the characteristics of information in society?
So my answer is information becomes one of the basic values of modern society. Knowledge and information become the main factor of the economic well-being of society and consequently a factor of stability and sustainable development of society. Hmm.
Right, Miss Mavi. The second question is, what is information revolution and impact on society?
Um, the information revolution has been claimed to exacerbate inequalities in society, such as racial, class, and gender inequalities, and to create a new digital divide in which those that have the skills and opportunities to use information technology uh, effectively reap to benefits while others are left behind.
That's right, Miss Mavi.
We're
Okay
done.
na.
So thanks for listening. Thank you.